Breaking news. Hungary and Greece are set to join BRICS, sending shockwaves through the European Union and marking a historic rupture in the continent's political landscape. The implications are immediate and profound, as two key EU members pivot toward a new global alliance. The headline reverberated through Brussels, shattering the morning calm and leaving officials stunned. News tickers flashed urgent updates, and newspapers scrambled to capture the magnitude of the moment. The city, usually bustling with routine, was suddenly gripped by uncertainty. Inside the Diplomat building, the heart of EU administration, panic quickly replaced routine. Aides scrambled between offices, phones rang off the hook, and urgent documents were passed from hand to hand as leaders tried to make sense of the unfolding crisis. This was no distant threat. Hungary and Greece, nations deeply woven into the EU's fabric, were now breaking away. Their departure wasn't just symbolic. It threatened the very unity and stability of the European project. In Budapest, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán stood before the press, declaring a new era of national sovereignty. He openly rejected what he called EU overreach, promising Hungarians a future shaped by their own choices and alliances. Meanwhile, in Athens, Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis framed the move as a matter of economic survival. He assured the Greek people that joining BRICS would open doors to new markets, fresh investment, and a chance to escape years of financial hardship. The synchronized announcements revealed months of secret planning and back-channel negotiations. For months, officials from both countries had quietly coordinated their exit, keeping even their closest EU partners in the dark. For the EU, this was a crisis far deeper than Brexit, a tearing of the continent's fabric that threatened to unravel decades of integration. Leaders gathered in emergency meetings, their faces etched with worry, as they confronted the possibility of further defections. In Washington, the National Security Council convened in an emergency session, alarmed at the implications for NATO and the Western Alliance. The sudden shift raised urgent questions about the future of collective security in Europe. With Hungary and Greece now pivoting toward Russia and China, the Western Alliance faced a strategic nightmare. The balance of power in Eastern Europe was shifting, and old certainties were dissolving overnight. The world suddenly felt far less stable. Global markets tumbled, crisis points flashed across the map, and anxious crowds gathered around public screens, watching history unfold in real time. The Geneva press conference was political theater on a global stage, watched live by millions around the world. The air was thick with anticipation, as journalists and diplomats from every continent gathered, sensing that history was about to be made. Viktor Orbán, Hungary's outspoken leader, took the podium and declared the end of liberal hegemony, accusing the EU of punishing dissent and ignoring the true interests of its member nations. His words echoed through the hall, challenging the very foundation of the European project. "We are not leaving Europe," he insisted, his voice unwavering. "We are reclaiming our destiny as sovereign states, determined to chart our own course and protect our people's future." Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the Greek prime minister, was more measured but equally resolute. He cited years of austerity, economic hardship, and slow growth, arguing that Greece deserved a future of prosperity and dignity, not endless sacrifice. Mitsotakis praised BRICS for offering investment and partnership without political strings attached, presenting it as a genuine opportunity for nations seeking growth and respect on their own terms. Both leaders framed the move as pragmatic, not anti-European, emphasizing that their decision was about national renewal, not rejection of shared history or values. In Brussels, EU leaders called it a historic mistake, warning of dire consequences, but their powerlessness was clear for all to see. The usual threats and condemnations rang hollow. The EU's traditional tools of influence, financial leverage, and legal threats had not only failed but had backfired, fueling resentment and driving members to seek new alliances. The announcement marked a turning point in modern history. Globalization was no longer a one-way street, and the old certainties were crumbling. BRICS, once dismissed as a loose coalition, had become a real alternative for disillusioned Western members, offering hope and a new vision for the future. The world order was shifting before everyone's eyes, alliances tested as never before, and the stakes had never been higher. The balance of power was upended overnight, sending shockwaves through governments, markets, and ordinary citizens everywhere as the world braced for what would come next. To grasp this crisis, compare the EU and BRICS. The EU is built on deep integration, shared laws, open borders, pooled sovereignty. Membership means giving up some national control for collective strength. BRICS is the opposite. A flexible alliance, no central authority, no common currency. Its core is absolute national sovereignty, uniting democracies and autocracies alike. The EU demands conformity to shared values. BRICS offers partnership without judgment. For some, the EU is a golden cage. For others, BRICS is a path to freedom. Leaders like Orban and Mitsotakis saw in BRICS a chance to escape EU constraints. Sovereignty, first cooperation, became irresistible. Hungary and Greece's pivot was years in the making. For Orban, it was ideological, defending sovereignty against what he saw as EU overreach. Clashes with Brussels over migration, media, and the rule of law fueled his defiance. BRICS offered him investment and political cover, free from Western scrutiny. For Greece, the motivation was economic despair after years of austerity and stagnation. The EU's stability felt like stagnation. BRICS promised investment and new markets. China's investments in Greek infrastructure came without demands for reform. Both countries gambled on BRICS as a path to revival, rejecting a European project they felt had failed them. Markets crashed as the news broke, sending shockwaves through financial centers across the continent. Traders scrambled to make sense of the sudden collapse, their faces etched with disbelief and anxiety as numbers tumbled on the screens. The euro plummeted to its lowest level in over 20 years, a symbol of the crisis gripping Europe. Stock markets nosedived, wiping out billions in value within hours. Meanwhile, borrowing costs for Greece and Hungary soared to alarming heights, raising fears of a wider financial meltdown. Investors around the world watched in horror, fearing a domino effect. The question on everyone's mind: who might be the next to exit, and could the crisis spread beyond Europe's borders? In Washington, frustration and concern mounted. US officials openly blamed what they saw as EU inflexibility, arguing it was pushing longtime allies toward the waiting arms of Moscow and Beijing, further destabilizing the global order. The Western alliance appeared deeply fractured. With 2 NATO members now openly aligning with its rivals, questions swirled about the future of transatlantic unity and the strength of collective defense. In stark contrast, the mood in Moscow and Beijing was jubilant. State media celebrated the split, framing it as a decisive victory for a multipolar world and a blow to Western dominance. Putin and Chinese officials welcomed Hungary and Greece with open arms at a high-profile summit, using the moment to highlight the West's disarray and to promote their vision of a new global order. Across Europe, public opinion was sharply divided. In Western capitals, anger and anti-government protests erupted, while in Budapest and Athens, crowds gathered in support, some expressing quiet admiration for their leaders' bold moves. The event laid bare deep ideological rifts between those who champion European integration and those who demand national sovereignty, between liberalism and rising nationalism. Clashes between opposing groups underscored the continent's growing polarization. Europe's unity, once seen as unbreakable, now appeared more fragile than ever, as leaders faced the daunting task of holding the Union together amid unprecedented turmoil. As the dust settled, analysts warned of a historic challenge to the Western alliance. This wasn't just about 2 countries leaving, it was a precedent for others to follow. NATO's unity was in doubt. Could it trust members now aligned with Russia and China? The EU faced economic turmoil. A Greek default could trigger a new crisis, and investor confidence was shaken. The perception of EU permanence was shattered, raising political risk and slowing growth. Experts saw grim futures, bitter divorces, further fragmentation, or a more rigid, alienating EU. All agreed. The world had entered a new era of great power competition. The stability of the post-Cold War order was gone. Europe's future, and the world's, was now uncertain. The stakes had never been higher. This crisis wasn't just for politicians. It hit ordinary people hard. The euro's plunge raised prices for fuel and goods, while stock crashes wiped out savings. In Greece and Hungary, promises of prosperity clashed with immediate instability and risk of isolation. The Schengen dream of borderless travel faded as emergency controls loomed. Freedoms once taken for granted were under threat. Globally, a divided Europe weakened responses to climate change, pandemics, and security threats. Authoritarian regimes saw opportunity in the West's disarray. The events of November 2025 were a wake-up call. Global order is fragile, and institutions can fail. Understanding these shifts is essential for every citizen. The choices made now will shape freedoms, security, and prosperity for years to come.